Welcome to Fans of the Forge, where we are recapping Season 6, Episode 5, The Hussar Saber. Mm-hmm. So this week, our contestants were Brian Havelich, or Evelich.
Something like that.
He is a part-time smith with 1 year of experience and a full-time minister from Wolcott, Connecticut, nearby.
Wolcott. Yeah.
How about that? Then we have Deke Parker, who's 19 years old and is a part-time smith with 9 years of experience. And he got into knife making because his dad complained that he was using up all the internet.
And I believe he said his dad threw his Xbox down the stairs.
Yeah.
So that's
great household. Yep. Really a stable. JK, I don't know what that's all about. But, I think an Xbox flying down the stairs is anything good.
And then leading the kid into knife making?
Yeah, I mean...
got him out of the house. He didn't have an Xbox to play anymore.
Outside.
It's got unique roots there. Unique backstory. So then we move on to Eric Ratliff, who is a part-time smith with 3 years of experience, who is also a tattoo artist and musician. Mm-hmm. And finally, we have Don Bubba Cantrell, who is a part-time smith with 4 years of experience. So, round one, Will Willis... you have a table covered, and he says, we've given you guys all different types of metals, blah, blah, blah. Here you go, whips off the cape, whatever, and they have every type of metal you can imagine, and they're asked to make a canister damascus using all these different types of metal. They have to use 4 within their can.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
But they're tiny bits.
They are tiny, and... as long as they're somewhat similar, then hopefully you can get a couple that might forge together properly or more easily, like if you know your metal compositions and stuff.
Right.
Maybe.
So they had bearings, fish hooks, chains of different types, squares, springs,
rebar.
all sorts of shit. So Brian goes for ball bearings, roller bearings, spring steel, and rebar to make a drop point recurve blade. He lines his canister with whiteout ahead of time, and while that is drying, he's cleaning off the steel he's going to put inside there. So that's, a good point. Let that shit dry.
Yeah. And it's better to clean off the metals.
Yeah, that's going to be
all
great.
Good things.
All good for forge welding properly. And then when he took his can out, after it was all set, the weld should have set, the can popped right off it's supposed to, and he had a great billet to work with.
You don't see that very often.
No, usually there's some kind of problem.
Yeah.
It came off like nothing. I mean, it's just like it was almost empty, just dropped it.
It was almost as if he had used a paper towel to wrap it. White out.
Yeah. And then Brian gets some thermocycling done and goes for a quench. However, after the quench, he picked up a decent warp with that blade.
It was like a seesaw.
Yeah, it was a big curve, and you're just kind of pushing on it. Didn't really show him doing much to correct it in this round. Mm-hmm. So moving on to Deke, he went with ball bearings, fish hooks, bike chains, and W1 to make a drop point buoy. He put liquid white in his canister, but then added 1095 powder before the whiteout could dry.
Yep.
However, did get some kudos for adjusting his tongs, which isn't something normally seen on the show. And I think Dave said, a lot of guys struggle with their tongs.
Rather than just adjusting them to fit.
Right, so it was good to see him, going for that.
This kid seemed to know his stuff.
He did. However, he did spend 30 to 45 minutes trying to cut off the canister.
True. So he did forget about the whiteout. If he had let it dry, it might have done a little bit more for him.
And once it was open, he sees that there's a lot of cracks in his billet. And he's like, to know if it's worth using, I'm just going to whack it a couple times. He had it in a vise, and it just kind of broke apart easily. So he had to start over with another canister.
At least he checked it.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's been times where guys have just gone with it, and then it wasn't until they're starting to grind, they see these giant cracks.
He saw the crack. I wonder if, if he threw it back into forge to actually start drawing it out, if it would have just blown apart at that point too. So, but at least didn't waste time heating it up.
Right.
To figure that out. He then decided to leave the can on and would grind off the mild steel later instead of trying to get that thing off. So
Makes sense. That's a common way to do that.
So for Eric, he had never made canister Damascus before and decided to make a Tonto.
Okay. Not criticizing, but I saw a few comments on the Facebook today that said it is season 6 and Damascus has been a pretty prevalent competition thing or challenge that they have to do.
Particularly canister.
Canister, yes. So you'd think you'd maybe practice it at least once. Like after you submit the application to be like, hey, I might actually get on the show. Maybe I should try out a canister
Maybe
Damascus.
Get a little,
But
valid. That's something I would probably say.
It depends. People, just looking at how long it's taking me to get this shop up and going, right? And I would love to be out there working, but it's taking a long time because of the weather and all this other stuff. So maybe people don't have as much time to get into the forge. Maybe, if you're a hobbyist and you're, signing up for the show, you only get in as much time as you normally can get in. It could be tough to get those extra hours.
Standing up for him.
I am.
All right. Well, don't go on a show without trying to make a can.
I will take that in consideration.
Okay. So he appeared to grab fish hooks, files, horseshoes, and some square stock for his canister. He did have some trouble with the welder, and wouldn't you know it, 19-year-old Deke comes over, helps him out, and sets him up. And so, further a little bit later, he opens up his can and sees that not all the welds held. And he had about 75 minutes left, but wasn't sure if he would have to start over or if he could just cut the bad parts out. Mm-hmm. So he decided to cut the billet, stack it, throw it in the forge to weld it, and press it into usable billet. However, the reworked billet still had a bunch of cracks in it, come to find out. So Eric decides to start over with a new canister with very minimal time left.
Right. Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah. Moving on to Bubba, also never done a canister before. So he went with bike chain, chainsaw chain, saw blades, and large cubes to make a clip point hunter.
That's an interesting choice. You choose the chains, like the bike chain and the chainsaw chain, are going to be oiled up a little bit, right? And probably dirty.
Most likely.
There had to have been easier materials to pick from.
They show somebody as grabbing, because they had the little jars of stuff. So I don't know how they were on the table.
Yeah.
His position when he got to the table, if that was right in front of him, he just grabbed it. Who knows? But
yep.
Anyhow, once the top of the can opened up, and you can see the cubes didn't weld properly. Mm-hmm. So he started over, and this time used smaller cubes. And somehow when he's loading the can, right, he's got just the metal in there. A fire breaks out. And so he's like, I don't know where the sparks came from. I don't know why his stuff is on fire. He's like, I'm just gonna go to a welding station. He walked away. Like there's a fire on this table, and he just walked away.
And so was it whiteout was on fire?
The liquid, yeah.
It was all the liquid paper whiteout was all just lit up.
How did it start, though?
We don't know. He doesn't know either. He's like, I don't know how the sparks happened, but he's like, there's nothing there.
All of a sudden, it's on fire. He walks away.
Okay, to weld up his can. So a crew member comes by, puts that fire out. So while welding his can, it starts to shoot out sparks.
Right.
All right. There's sparks and flame.
Yeah.
Both fires are put out by a crew member using an extinguisher. Huzzah! Like someone else did this fire extinguisher for you. Like what happened?
I don't know.
And is it that guy's job to just be ready with an extinguisher, or was someone like, hey?
There's definitely got to be people on set at all time that are like the safety crew in case something goes wrong, because they're using gas forges and all this other stuff.
Well, now we know that they have to be on high alert when there's whiteout in the room, because who knows? I don't feel safe in my house. I got to find my little whiteout canisters. and
throw
them out. I got to throw them out in the snow.
Throw them out there. Get a chemical storage locker.
Yeah.
Could be good. Nice
Hazmat. I'll call hazmat.
Yeah, hazmat. That works.
Yeah.
One of those would probably keep you safe from the whiteout.
I would hope so. Yeah. All right. So moving on to judging. Brian had a significant warp, but overall it was well done. Deke had a nice shape with an aggressive point, but kind of a small handle. Eric's was had very large chunks of steel and did not meet parameters of being a blade. And if you saw this thing, it didn't look good.
No. It was just cracks, and it just wasn't. It was starting to maybe be billet shaped a little.
But it had like a form, but like there was these big cracks going up from like where the edge would be. Bubba had a slight delamination, possibly from leaving the canister on that was lined with the whiteout. So because he left that canister on and it had whiteout in it, it caused a delamination, this little delamination part. So Eric ended up getting a boot because what he turned in wasn't a knife.
Yes. So
surrender your steel. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So round 2, they have to attach a handle and a guard. Brian decides to use the torch to remove the warp and gets a good result from it. He gets his blade sharpened enough where it will remove hair, but does not want to test. And we have like Bubba. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Did they say the tests beforehand? I think they did.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going in knowing that they're going to have
A paint can,
stab,
and
and
apple
chop,
slice.
and an apple slice.
Oh, yeah.
right in that order. So they have to go through the paint cans. Then they're going to have to slice the apples. So they were trying to keep that in mind as they structured their blades. Deke works on making the handle a bit wider to make up for the lack of steel in the handle area. And while hammering pins, a handle scale breaks, and he decides to use epoxy to put it back together instead of just creating a new scale. And then he also had a gap in between his guard and the handle, and he had to like fill that in with another piece. It ended up looking nice.
And wasn't he pouring like epoxy?
Pretty much everywhere.
Anywhere to like around the gap to help fill it in?
Yeah. Well, he had the guard, he had the scales, then he had this other piece that he shoved in there, and a spacer, and then he's like, yeah, just get some epoxy on there. Get it all in the gaps.
Right.
So Bubba works on the guard and decides to weld it on, knowing that the judges wouldn't like it. So he's like, yeah, they're not going to like it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
All right, that's what I'm going to do.
Because of the other smiths having trouble with their handles, Bubba decides to go for a paracord wrapped handle.
Smart idea.
Smart idea. And they were complimenting his style in doing that. He like knows how to do it. He started doing it the right way. In the past, we've seen some haphazard paracord handles because usually they're rushed, but this was planned and he did a nice job. Then he decides to test his blade before, because he decides if it's going to break, I want it to be by my hand.
Right.
So he grabs a block of ash, and the whole time Ben's like, no, don't. That's such a no. This pleases Ben for destroying a good piece of ash. His test went fairly well, only taking a small roll on the edge.
But he went right back and cleaned that up. At least he had some confidence going in.
Meanwhile, Brian's looking at him like, well, I'm not going to do that.
I'm not doing that.
So then they go for the testing. And by now, oldest one had gotten home from school. So we're watching this. And she's like, whoa. Very much like this whole paint can thing.
Yeah.
She also liked Eric's mohawk.
Oh, okay.
Brian, the blade held up, but the handle is blocky. And the finger well kind of keeps the hand away from the guard. Deke, the edge held up, but handle is really small. And then we get to the last one, and you know, our kid, she's watching, oh, it's red, and then it's white paint. And I'm like, I think it's going to be blue paint. And it was. Bubba, some edge rolling, but well done. Ben comes away looking like a Jackson Pollock.
Yeah. Shoes look pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
So then we go on to the apple slice, where Brian had a good sharp edge near the handle, but not as sharp in the middle, and it caused some apples to fracture and break away. For Deke, part of the cuts were clean, but there are some parts of the blade that aren't sharp. And then Bubba, the first quarter of the apple is cut, but the rest is fractured, so there's an edge, but not entirely sharp edge. Bubba gets the boot because it took the most damage during the strength test and suffered in the sharpness test.
So we move into round 3. These two smiths will have to make an Austro-Hungarian Hussar Saber. It's a swift and deadly weapon carried by the Hussar, an elite cavalry unit dating back to the 15th century. Features a slight curve for slashing, influenced by Turkish and Persian weaponry, and they had to have it be between 30 and 32 inches. The handle must include a knuckle bow, a backstrap, and longes. Or is it langets?
Depends on who you ask.
Longes. So for Brian, on day 1, he starts off by saying, this is 3 times longer than anything I've made before. He uses the press to help work the blade into the proper shape because he was having some difficulty hammering it and getting the thing to the proper curve that he wanted. And the press worked out pretty well for him.
He put it up on these little block things to help make the curve happen. Yep. So that was cool.
Yeah, it was neat. For day 2, he MacGyvered up his words, his gas forge onto a table in line with his coal forge so that he could heat up the blade for his quench and have all of it being heated at the same time, which it's interesting. It seemed, I wanted to say dangerous, but it's already both on fire, so I guess it doesn't really, not dangerous, but it must be difficult to keep them the same temperature.
I would say so. But he seemed to have it under control, so.
Yeah, it's true. And then for day 4, he decided to make his longes as crosses instead of vertical posts.
Amen.
I was a little confused, not because of the crosses, but because of the way the crosses would be displayed when using it. Like if it's in a sheath, the crosses are facing up.
So they're upside down?
But if you're using it, the crosses are upside down, which is generally the opposite of what you're going for there.
When he put it on, because when you turn them upside down, doesn't that mean something completely different?
Yeah, that's not good things. So I was a little concerned about that. But whatever.
Bring it to a Ghost concert or something.
Yeah,
like
a Ghost concert.
Yeah.
You'd fit right in with a sword with that on it.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Bringing a sword to a concert?
Well, don't bring any weapons to concerts. Anyway, we move on to Deke. And in day 1 for him, he had lots of hand forging to do. And he pondered just how this blade got its name.
Right.
And it's just kind of...
He's like, who decided it's gonna be called the Austro-Hungarian, Hussar Saber?
Yeah.
The Austro and Hungarians.
Yeah, the people that made it, yes.
Ah, man.
So on day 3, he was working on his handle setup, and he was using brake cleaner to clean up some of the residue, and it just ate away at the epoxy that was holding his scales together.
Whoops.
Oops. And so he ended up having to remake that 2 more times.
Yes.
Because the second attempt also just didn't hold up. When he went to take the clamps off, it was delaminating. So
Which happened on day 4.
That was on day 4, yes. Decided to reconfigure the handle, but delaminates during grinding. That's what happened. But his final attempt goes pretty well.
Yeah. And no day 5 for either one of them, so.
Yeah, it almost
like
seemed...
fit and finish.
Pretty much, yeah.
Polishing it up.
So we go back into the forge for testing. We had a Doug pig carcass kill test. For Brian, he had a very forward balance, but it cuts deep. Like, those were good-looking cuts, but it will kill. And then for Deke, he had a very good balance. It was a little further back. It made it much easier to swing the weapon and control it. He had a very nice use of the fuller as well that kind of helped reduce the weight and gave him an advantage there. He also will kill. For the strength test, there was the lance chop being done by David Baker. So, I don't know. This test seemed a little weird to me. I mean, I get it. It's like you're chopping at them. But
it's...
it just seemed like a little bit of a janky setup.
Indicative of what it would be going up against in that era as,
I guess.
cavalry wielders. But, yeah, I mean, just hitting sticks with it.
Yeah.
So,
it was
whatever.
It was fine. It was a test.
As they all are.
So for Brian, his blade held up well, but it was a little heavy. And he did have an issue with those lingettes. His upside-down crosses were cutting into Dave's hand.
So those crosses.
They cut into Dave's hand.
Yeah.
And you never want to hurt a judge. That's never a good thing. For Deke, for his lance chop, there was a little bit of glinting on the blade, but no rolls. It was still a sharp blade, and Dave also loved the balance. And then for the sharpness test, it was a hide slice being performed by Doug. And Brian's cut through like nothing.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I was like, that must be a really weak-ass test, right? Like, it's just cutting right through.
It did so well. I was like, what kind of test is this?
Yeah, it was no problem.
But then Deke goes up with his, or Doug goes up with Deke's, and it doesn't even do anything like on the first one.
It didn't look good.
And then the second one kind of cut a little, and then the third one finally did cut in, but it wasn't these long slashes that Brian had gotten.
No.
So
that last one was maybe a foot long.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. So it was really, really deceiving, I guess. I thought it was easier than that. So anyway, it still will cut just a little bit.
A little bit.
And so from there, it all comes down to the judge's decision of Deke winning.
Dave Baker's dainty hands.
So Brian's handle construction hurt the user and was too forward heavy.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's what did him in.
I feel like anytime you see a judge draw blood, that's it.
Yeah, I think so. That's a tough one. But
Amen.
So congratulations to Deke on your win. I like this episode. Like, some of the last season's episodes are kind of getting to be a drag and the same thing over and over again. But this it was good. It was a nice one.
For some reason, I liked all the different metals being out there for them to use for Damascus. And, there's some drama, but, for the most part, pretty good, solid.
It was a solid episode. Can't complain. So, I guess that's it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel. And if you are a new subscriber and are wondering what the hell it is these people are doing on your screen, this is what we normally do.
This is what we do. And listen, keep your whiteout somewhere safe because it'll just catch fire.
It's very dangerous.
Use the tape. You ever see the tape? The tape whiteout?
Oh,
yeah.
That stuff's great.
I love those. The little rolling
Yeah,
things.
just roll it out. It's done. You don't have to wait for it to
But if
dry.
you're not pressing hard enough and you lift it up, it peels and it gets everywhere.
Is it made from the same exact stuff as liquid whiteout? Because wouldn't it still then be flammable if it was the same material?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
We can try it out. That's an experiment.
Can
We'll
light
just
one
leave
up
it
there and
out
see what
and-
happens.
All right. We'll figure it out.
All right. Anyway, thank you again for all of the recent subscribers to the channel.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
So that's the video. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you very soon, actually, with another Tour de Force video.
Yes.
Good night.
See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to keep any of this in the episode. Maybe, like, for down the line when we do Fans of the Forge After Dark.
Ooh.
Is that
Halloween. Bring it back for Halloween.